Hi everyone, Sam Silverman, Managing Partner of EB-5 Affiliate Network. We're a national EB-5 consulting regional center operator. We have 15 regional centers that cover 21 states, and we work with clients, primarily real estate developers and project developers, looking to structure the full set of EB-5 documents for their projects and bring them to market under an approved regional center.
Sam, you run a lot of regional centers. Anything that pops up for you?
When we're thinking about risk for projects, we typically look at both immigration and financial risk, right? So on the immigration side, it's really what's the likelihood of the jobs, the 10 jobs being in place for the project, right? And for that to be true, you've got to look at, execution risk. Is it already under construction? What's the likelihood of all the financing coming together, right? Separate from that, you've got, the TEA letter and the regional center being approved and active. Those are pretty easy to check though. It's more of what's the likelihood that this project is going to successfully create the jobs, right? So a safer project is one where it's fully financed, construction's underway, maybe there are already jobs that have already been created. That's going to be a lot lower risk than something that's, just a rendering and maybe there's a letter of intent from a lender, but there's no equity in place or the land hasn't closed. Things like that are going to be red flags for just a higher risk project. Not a project that's not going to be approvable, but just one that's going to be of greater risk, right? And then on the financial side, it's basically, is the capital structure fully capitalized? Is it intact? And is the project totally reliant on EB-5 financing? That's really the threshold issue. If only one investor signed up for the EB-5 in that particular project, they're looking for $10 million, only one person signs up, does the project move forward or not? And how likely or how sure are you that that's true, right? That's really the key question.
Sam, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so when we look at project documents as the regional center, we have 15 centers that cover 21 states and probably looked at about 300 or so projects over the last 5 years. It's not, what we see is it's not so much the team members. You often don't find a firm, a law firm particularly, that's doing their first EB-5 offering and is gonna try to wing it or just start from scratch. Most of the vendors that we see have done more than one EB-5 transaction, so they're not typically missing like key components or giant red flags that would mess up an investor's trajectory. What we most commonly see are that a lot of the vendors, securities attorney, immigration lawyer, economist, business plan, all these different companies are all kind of operating in their own silo. They're all separate firms. And they're all typically being engaged and working in the project at different steps. And so what we see is kind of number one issue is version control. Just last week we saw brand name economist, but in the report the regional center name was wrong, the total raise was wrong, and that was because changes had been made since the first draft of the report till when we were provided the final draft. And so not having kind of one person to kind of oversee the different components and that one kind of overseeing person know what to look for, you often have an issue of just everyone kind of driving on their own parallel path, but nobody really like making sure everything ties all the numbers and key terms across all the documents. It's a really easy way for USCIS to pick up on an issue when they've got one total number of investors in one document and it doesn't match in another one, or a name doesn't match. Those are really easy errors to make. So having that kind of one person who knows what they're doing to kind of vet all the final versions, make sure everything matches, that's really the one major issue that we see when we're looking at a new set of documents for a project.
I'm curious to hear, Sam, as a proprietor of many regional centers that does deals for developers, how you vet projects and management team members.
Yeah, so we have 15 regional centers that cover 21 states, and so we see a lot of projects. We have a lot of active projects with investors across that footprint, and so there's kind of a two-piece system. One is the initial diligence of the project, so looking at the key offering documents, the business plan, the PPM, the subscription, the offering, who are the people involved, who are the different team members involved if we didn't work on the documentation ourselves, right? So going in, do the documents meet EB-5 requirements, and is it a team that we feel comfortable that's going to be able to execute on the project itself? A lot of projects don't meet our criteria, and so they're not affiliated with any one of our regional centers. But the ones that do meet our criteria, once they become part of that regional center, become sponsored by one of those 15 licenses, annually USCIS requires you to file a compliance, kind of a 924A job kind of update that's actually coming due this December. It's every December is the filing, a month and a half or so after the fiscal year end with USCIS, and that details all the activity of projects that are active with investors under the regional center, what the status is on the job creation and number of investors and activity that's happening. We kind of go well above what that requires. That's a once a year report. We do quarterly compliance reports on all of our projects. So every quarter we reach out to the sponsor, to the developer, and get an update on what money's been spent, where investor funds are at that time, if there are active investors in the project, are they in escrow, or has their capital actually gone into the project, what's their immigration status, and then we have a full securities compliance form with about 30 or so questions that they sign off on every quarter over the year. So it's not a once a year filing that's required by the government, but it's a quarterly check-in, and then any project that has an investor, at least one investor, we do a physical site visit. Someone from our team goes to the actual project site, no matter where it is, at least once a year for any project that has at least one active investor, so we can see what's happening. Is there actual construction? If someone said there was construction, what's actually happening, in the dirt on site, right? So it's really important to go above what the government requires, because oftentimes, like, just getting a short email once a year and not having a physical presence to see what's happening, usually that's not going to be sufficient.
Could I ask an unfair question?
Only if it's not.
So Sam, the proposed integrity measures would require regional centers to certify as to securities compliance. Do you think that's feasible?
I don't think it's feasible. No, I don't.
That's the right answer.
No.